Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Student Activities Board Music Box Concert Series. Today we have Asia Samson. Asia has toured over 2,000 colleges with an acoustic music poetry. Sorry. He holds the record for the highest book poetry act in the college market. Asia Samson has been seen on HBO's Def Poetry Jam, TED Talks, NPRs, Tiny Desk Contests, Story Conferences, and So Far Sounds. Please welcome our guest, Asia Samson.
So think back to when you were a child, and on the count of three, yell out what you wanted to be when you grew up. Whoever's here, ready? 1, 2, 3. Movie star? What was yours? Teacher. What was yours? What's your guys' up there? Really? And you're doing that now? That's awesome. You guys want to know what I wanted to be? I wanted to be a heart surgeon / architect / painter / ninja. Like, that's a thing, right? Like, think about it. I would design and build the hospital where I work, saving lives by day while assassinating them by night. Only the bad guys, obviously. Okay, fine, mostly. Then use the blood of those I've slain to paint beautiful landscapes on my porch every Sunday. Okay, that's disturbing, but it's totally doable. And I kept believing that until Maya, a second grader, punched me in my third grade stomach, and I let out such a loud scream I realized I would make the most horrible ninja ever, but that's okay, because I could still be a heart surgeon / architect / painter. And I kept believing that until Mrs. Mercutio, my high school counselor, told me my grades were as low as my parents' income, so I better think of something else besides med school. To this day, I wonder if she's still there, flicking off the light switch inside our children to keep them from being brilliant, but that's okay, because I could still be an architect / painter. And I kept believing that until my father, who's an architect, said it's really hard to find a job as an architect. Wait, no. Until they said artists will always starve. Wait, no. Until be realistic. Until find stability. Until I had no slashes left to keep tabs of all of my dreams. As children, we transformed blankets into tents and explored the safaris of our bedrooms by flashlight. We wore goggles and snorkels in the bathtub, believing this was an ocean filled with wonders and sea creatures we will discover when we dive. We tied towels around our necks and flew off the coffee table, pointing to the spot where we needed to land to break our record. We drew pictures of ourselves, the astronauts / teachers, the ballet dancers / rock stars. I kept mine at the bottom of my drawer for safekeeping, only to find them last week, hidden beneath mortgage papers and credit card statements and the work badge I used to enter the building of a job I never wanted. How much further was I willing to bury who I was meant to become just to live a life that's steady? How long have I muffled the voices of those drawings when they tried to tell me steady is just a word we like to use anytime someone asks, how's your life? And we're too ashamed to give the actual answer. In 2006, my doctor looked me in the eyes and told me I had testicular cancer, to which I replied, yay, sounds like a ball. He didn't laugh. Instead, he says, you understand that after we remove one testicle, you'll only have one testicle left. And I said, okay, then I'll just change my name to One Hung Low because I'm Asian. Still nothing. Instead, he says, you might not be able to have children after this. You might want to consider having your sperm frozen before the surgery. And I said, great. I will never look at frozen yogurt the same way ever again. He didn't think any of my jokes were funny, but how could you not find them funny? You're talking about me, the guy who once had dreams of doing ambitious things and is now teaching telemarketing to students and retired bankers. The guy who was taught that being a man meant being fully equipped, and now you want to come snip, snip, and separate the Wonder Twins? The guy who will later tell his friends and then respond by texting him a picture of a wonton saying, hey, don't worry, we found you a replacement. The guy who's already so skinny that those automatic doors at the grocery store can't detect me, and I have to wave my arms and jump like a madman until it opens, and now you're saying I may have to go through chemo, which will make me skinnier than I already am. Damn, how is that not hilarious? Yeah, you might not find that funny, but I can guarantee you that whoever's piloting my fate decided to raid the minibar, lock the cockpit doors, and is hysterically pissing their pants by now. Have you ever wondered why why maniacal laughter is never included in the stages of grief. Maybe because it doesn't last that long. Maybe it's just a parenthesis, nestled between denial and anger, hold a grin between my clenched teeth, long enough to get the hell out of his office so I can cry on the shoulders of my car seat, how did I get here? I've never been one to go rogue and write my life past the margins. I once made billboards of my milestones and staggered them along my road to success, and now I'm wondering at what point did I lose the concrete beneath my steps. Maybe it's when my parents took that first flying exit out of their marriage. Maybe it's when I took that detour out of college, thinking there had to be a faster way, only to find myself going in circles until the student loan lights started blinking. Maybe I got tired of running on empty. Maybe it's why I took that desk job that promised me my own corner office. Maybe I couldn't tell if it was the tie or the slow death strangling my neck, working long hours, paying for a degree I never got. Maybe that's what led to this. Laying on the hospital bed, my eyes towards the God I was told was a God of promise, asking, are you laughing yet? Do you not see this? The heavy-handed nurse pushing the needle in and out of my skin, failing to find a vein for the IV. The machines beeping like an SOS distress signal, like maybe this is it for me. The rock bottom ending to a life spent falling. How funny that the last words I'll ever hear is a doctor saying he'll do his best to make the scar as minimal as possible, as if my prayers resided on that. I don't remember anything after. I just remember the fade to black. But I do remember this. Just before the darkness engulfed me like a confession booth, just before the anesthesia grabbed me by the veins and dragged me to my sleep, I heard a voice say, don't you see? This is your out. Because how can you ask to be molded into the person you're meant to be and then question how it's being done now? And when I woke up, I found myself here, standing on the stage, performing a poem where I get to say, I'm now 16 years cancer-free. I got a sexy battle scar slash beneath my belly. Oh, and remember what they said about me not being able to have children? Well, I should also mention, I now have a son much more perfect than any poem that can ever come from me. My son, who hides fruit snacks in the crevices of the couch and eats them again 2 days later. My son, who has this weird thing about placing stickers over his nipples. My son, who gets to pick out a book for us to read before he goes to bed, and eventually figured out that the longer the book, the longer he gets to stay up. No, I will not read you the entire Twilight trilogy. Now, put that back in mommy's drawer before you ruin it. My son, who, actually, hold on. I need to tell y'all the story. Okay, so my son's 8 years old, right? And he, he's potty trained, obviously. But for a very long time, when he first got potty trained, he was at that stage where, they can't really wipe themselves yet. So, they have to call on us to, do it for him. And this is how I know that I am now growing up in a world that he's growing up in a world that I never knew about as a kid. Because this dude was on the toilet doing his business, and when he finished, this kid yells out, I kid you not, Alexa, I'm done. I'm like, no, dude, Alexa doesn't do that. My son, who manages to leave Legos on the floor in the exact same spot I'll be walking in the middle of the night, so when the top of those Antichrist toys meets the bottom of my holy foot, I have to hold my mouth to silence the screams, because if I wake him, he won't go back to sleep for the rest of my life. If you think I'm overreacting, let me ask you, have you ever stepped barefoot on Legos? Yeah? Trust me, it hurts a lot more than having a testicle removed, but I still let him have them, because every time we put a new Lego set together, he immediately takes it apart and rearranges all the pieces, and when I tell him that's not how it looks in the picture, he replies by saying, it's okay, this way is better. Sometimes fate has a way of dismantling our lives to tell us it's okay, this way is better. May we all be rearranged and rebuilt like that. May the billboards of our plans be shredded by the wind, so I'll ask you again. Think back to when you were a child, and the answer you gave when someone asked what you wanted to be when you grew up. Think of how quick those answers came, held together by slashes before the world tried tearing them apart. Yeah, we may no longer want what we wanted back then, but it doesn't mean our hearts are meant to settle for something we don't want now, because somewhere you're 6 years old, still filling in the blanks of all the things you've ever wanted to be. You, there could be firefighter slash veterinarian. You, there could be superhero slash fashion designer. You, there could be master chef slash PlayStation gold medalist. You, the wide-eyed wanderers with your gaze towards the horizon. You, with the impossible mountains to climb. Do it for the gram. Bring your slash back. Place them between everything that makes up who you are, whoever that might be. Claim the amazing you've become and drop all the which no longer fits you. Me, I am Asia Samson, writer slash performer slash cancer survivor slash husband slash father slash professional napper. No, I never became an architect, but I found much more joy in building people up. No, I never became a heart surgeon, but I try to write poems that cut cut through the chest and get to what's broken. And no, I never became a ninja. Actually, that's not true. I'm totally a ninja. I'm like the most awesome ninja, fighting my best fight when the darkness comes. So tell the world to keep an eye out, because somewhere I'll be lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when I do, I promise you will never see me coming. What's going on, University of Findlay? How's it going? So my name is Asia. I gotta tell you guys a little story before we start. First of all, I really, really love this school. Sharinda, who is your advisor, for those that don't know, she's been bringing me to Findlay like almost every other year, like consistently since the start of my career. 2006, I started touring, and Findlay is one of those schools that I look forward to coming back to because, you know, like right now it's a little sparse in here. But I don't do the show for people who aren't here, man. I do it for the people who are, right? Like I see artists all the time, like there's only 3 people, so I didn't give my all. Well, those 3 people still took out time from their day to come see you. So that's why I am so glad you guys are here, and I'm already having a good time. We're gonna have fun tonight, man. And you know, and here's the thing, if some of you are cutting class to be here or just, you know, pushing off your day to be here, I will make it worth it for you. I want you to leave here like, man, I needed that. Because what is today, Friday? Sometimes you just need one of those after like a long week. And, you know, I had to be here. Point is, I had to be here despite the fact that I was being warned by the Weather Channel yesterday to not come. And I drove down from Columbus, I drove up from Columbus, and I'm from Florida, man. I don't know how y'all do snow. So like, okay, let me tell you a story. I was driving, I went this morning, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go get Burger King, right? And I'm like, okay, it's still snowing. Okay, what if I die? And like, Burger King is only like half a mile away, but I'm like, you know, they always say accidents happen within the first 3 miles of the house, right? So I'm driving, and then I get to, you know, I get to the intersection, and I hit the brake, and I was going really slow. Like, people know, you could know that I'm like a tourist, right? Like everybody else is kind of just zipping by me. And I stopped, and I felt the back of my vehicle kind of swerve a little bit like this. And yo, my heart dropped to my stomach. Like, I'm gonna die. I'm like, it's only like, whatever. So the fact that I had to risk my life to come here today, all right? We're gonna try to make this the best show I can possibly do. I usually travel with my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, Jolin, and I, we traveled together. And this was supposed to be our last show together. Unfortunately, 2 days before we were flying out here, he said that he was in contact with someone with COVID. And so to be safe, he decided not to come out. The last thing we wanted is for him to come do a show, get in contact with one of you, and then, you know, and he has it, and he's just not, you know, showing any symptoms. And then somebody here gets it, and next thing you know, all of this university is shut down because of one guest that came. So we decided to just kind of play it safe. And so I am trying to do everything. I try to take whatever tracks I have and like playing it, and it's gonna sound awkward. You know, it's better when there's live performance behind me. And so I really apologize for that. We're gonna do our best to try to make this a music poetry show. But if you've never been to a poetry show before, all right, okay, what's the best analogy? I'm a poet, I should be able to come up with this. We need to treat this poetry show like sex, okay? And what do I mean by that? That means that if you and I are in the same room together, which we are, right? And I'm going in, son, right? Like I am throwing down. I am screaming, I'm yelling your name, I'm giving you moves I've never given anybody before, you know, crouching tiger, hidden dragon type stuff, right? I give you all that, and you just lay there. See what I mean? It's gonna get awkward really quick. So throughout the show, you're more than welcome to laugh, you're more than welcome to cry, you're more than welcome to cheer. Any kind of energy you give me is the same kind of energy I'm gonna give right back. So if you've never been to a poetry show before, you could yell stuff. You could yell stuff like, speak, poet. You could yell that, right? Or you could be like, go in, son, right? Or you could just do little things like, or ooh. Basically anything that lets me know you like it tells me I need to go harder. Do you see how this metaphor works? Yeah? So, if you're ready for a poetry show, let me hear you make some noise. See what I mean? You do it for the people who are here. I don't care. We're like family now, right? Like, I would rather have this, right, than I've done college shows before where they've put me in the middle of a hallway, of like a really busy hallway in front of a Starbucks. And they're like, you know, we don't have any seats or anything, but just go and perform and people will walk by and hear words. I'm like, great, I am now the angry Asian guy who's just yelling at students in the hallway. So, yeah, so the fact that you guys are here, I thank you guys for that. I'm gonna throughout the show, I'm going to do some haikus. This is something new that I've been doing that I didn't do back in the day. I'm going to do these haikus now. How many of you know? How many of you know what a haiku is? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. What is a haiku? Any of you? Okay. Close. Yes. So it's a 3-line poem, 5 syllables, followed by 7, followed by 5. Now, writing haikus, you have to compact all these deep thoughts into just 3 lines of poetry, right? So, you know, it's going to be hard. So the haikus I'm going to do, it might be too deep. And you might be like, Asia, I don't get it, right? Because it's so abstract. But maybe later when you're sitting down somewhere, you're going to like look at it and be like, oh, wow, Asia, you're a genius, right? So, okay. So don't worry if you don't get these, all right? But these are the haikus that I've written. Number 1, turn up, on fleek, cash me outside. Stop texting me, mom, you're 65. Oh, snap, see how deep? That was deep. I don't care if you don't like them, these are my favorites. Number 2, I've got 99 problems, but a testicle, I only have one. Oh, snap, deep, deep, deep. Yes. See? Thank you, guys. I like these guys right here. They're like laughing the whole time. Like, I'm going to just keep my eyes focused on y'all because plus the camera's over there anyway. Just because I have small feet doesn't mean I have a small... Let's skip that one. Okay. Next up. So back when I did Finley, last time I was at Finley, I used to do this poem called 90s Love. Just a quick history on it. I did this poem called 90s Love. It's about loving somebody, like, and I compared it to the 90s era, which is the best era, by the way. And if you weren't born in it, I'm sorry. It was like the best era ever. They put it on Button Poetry, and it got sort of viral, right? It got viral enough to where I got hit up by Nokia Mobile, and then a lot of you probably don't even know who the hell Nokia is. But Nokia is a cell phone company from back in the day who used to make these brick cell phones that you could drop them and they will never break. And like they were just, and all you could do was call. Like that's it. There is no Facebook on it. There's none of that, right? It was just a phone. And so they hit me up and they're like, hey, we're going to be re-releasing some of our phones. We'd like for you to do a nostalgia poem based off the 2000s era. Can you just take your 90s poem and make it relevant to 2000? See, I stopped touring the 90s poem because a lot of you, see, the thing about touring is, and I talked to Shrin about this last night, is that I come back to a school and I've grown up, but the audience is still the same age, right? So the generational gap, like, was so wide that nobody understood the references in the 90s poem anymore. So I stopped doing it. So I did this 2000 poem, and then I'm like, oh, I could tour this now, because a lot of you will probably know some of the references in, you know, growing up in the 2000s. So I'm going to read this poem, and all you have to do is if you hear something that you remember growing up, you need to make more noise than everybody else. That way I don't feel so old, okay? Don't make me feel old. Yesterday was my birthday, right? And, yeah, was it yesterday? No, 2 days ago. Wednesday was my birthday. And I'm at that age now. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But it's the age now where, and some of the older people in here will know, I'm at that age where you have to do some subtraction now. Like, okay, what year is it minus what year was I born? Okay, that's how old I am. Like that, you know what I mean? Like you forget, like, am I, right? Okay, yeah. So let me just say that I'm probably twice your age, if not even more, which is really depressing. It's okay, I'm Asian, I don't look like it, so it's good. All right, you ready? Here you go. I want to love you like 2000s. I want to love you like sport headbands and long white tees. I want to love you like FUBU jacket and Echo jeans. I want to love you like fitted caps with the tag still showing and be all up in the club when the bows start throwing me with the Jersey Shore blowout and super clean white sneaks. You with the tight pink tracksuit with the word princess written in rhinestones across your butt cheeks. And just in case you want to skeet, I'll love you from the windows to the walls to the other side of the room that also has windows. You know what? I don't even know what that means. I want to love you like 2000s, back when love was as reliable as my very first cell phone. And for you, I'll spend the 99 cents to download your perfect ringtone, so go ahead and call me over and over again. I want to love you like I love my Nokia 3310. See how I did product placement because I had to write it for them? Like, man, what a sellout. Like, okay, anyway, whatever. The kind of love you can drop over and over and it'll never crack. I want to love you like that. The kind of love where I don't need games to keep me fulfilled. Because unlike smartphones today, my Nokia only had one game you can play. Who needs an angry bird when I can love you like Snake? Easy to learn, but hella hard to master. And the longer our love lasts, getting through it only gets harder because love ain't supposed to be easy. Girl, please. It's supposed to be as difficult as texting I love you using only the number keys. Like, you gotta press the number 8 3 times just to get a letter V. Love is crazy. Love is insane, yo. Love is creating voicemail greetings to start with a 1-minute slow jam intro. And we both know it sounded amazingly lame, but not as lame as spending hours staring at my computer waiting for you to pop up on AIM. And after the long-awaited wait, the first thing I do to find out if this love is true is to see if I made it to your MySpace top 8. I want to love you like 2000s. The kind of love as dramatic as primetime TV. I want our love to be awesome. Make you the Joey to my Dawson, the New York to my Flavor Flav, the Jon Stewart to my Stephen Colbert. I want to love you right there through everything, even through all the Grey's Anatomy type of pain. And just when I think all hope is lost, I'll find you right behind me like Rachel to Ross saying, I got off the plane. Anybody, right? Anybody watch Friends? No? Come on, man. That was like the best line ever. I want to love you like 2000s. I want to love you like we love saying "what's up" and chillax. I want to love you like Puffy and everyone's videos telling you to take that, take that. Back when love was over the top as Missy Elliott wearing a shiny garbage bag, working it with fluorescent paint on her face. I want to love you the way Nelly loved Band-Aids, the way 182 loved to blink. I want to love you the way people love debating who was better, Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. The answer? The answer, Boys to Men. The answer is always Boys to Men. I want to love you like 2000s. I want to love you like the iPod Classic with the click wheel and fill it with the 1,000 love songs we learned how to steal. I'm sorry, not steal. They said it was all free. That's why we spent all night on Napster downloading MP3s. Besides, who's really going to tell? I want to love you like the day my internet got upgraded to DSL, because let's face it, 56K dial-up would always stall, messing up my house phone and disconnecting calls, but like love, I'll find a way to reach you wherever you are. I want to love you the way you love this CD changer in the trunk of your car, and since you can't reach it, you better choose the 6 CDs you're willing to listen to with no doubt. Otherwise, you have to pull over to the side of the road just to change it out, but like love, we'll stop whatever we're doing just to keep things at its best, because love has always been about progress. Each day an exciting time to discover something new, so I want to love you like 2000s, where every bold step into the future is just a step for me to get closer to you. Now take that, take that. All right, so I wrote some haikus. First of all, thank you guys for coming to sit down. Now you feel so much closer. Aww. I love this. See, I'm telling you, man, it's like great. I would have told you guys to just come all the way up, but we're here. We're good. We're all comfortable. That's probably more comfortable than sitting in these chairs, right? So, yeah, you go ahead. As long as you're here, we're here. I wrote some haikus for 2020, because 2020 was, man, we've had one hell of a couple years, haven't we? Like, and the funny thing is, it feels like it started a long time ago. Doesn't 2020, like when this whole thing started, it felt like it was forever ago, and yet here we are. Like, the world is so different now. Like, we're all wearing masks. Like, it's just a really weird time to be alive right now. And I feel bad for a lot of you who probably were a high school senior during 2020, because, oh, were you? Because, like, like you couldn't, like you guys had no prom, no graduation, all that stuff. Man, okay. I'm telling you, man, y'all have it a lot. Like, a lot of old people like me like to be like, well, when I was young, blah, 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 it was tough. No, man, you guys have had, like, it's a tougher era to grow up in, for sure. All I had to worry about was just getting home before they turned off the streetlights. Like, that was my biggest worry, and you guys. So anyway, 2020, you are like my ex-girlfriend. Exciting, but crazy. If y'all don't like my haikus, I'm sorry. I'm going to keep doing them because they make me happy. Matter of fact, if you would write haikus, write some funny ones and then tag me on social media. I swear, it will give me like a boost. I wear masks. No, not the kind that stops viruses. I'm robbing a bank. If COVID teaches us anything, it's how to use unfriend button. Right? Like, I'm telling you, like, more stupid people have come out since COVID. Like, you hear stuff online, like, where do you even base your information? And what's sad is that my wife is, she works in the ER and she works in the medical field. And so to hear certain people talk about stuff and you're just like, that's some idiot stuff, right? Yeah. So, okay, I was given an hour and a half to perform. And so I was like, ooh, do I even have an hour and a half worth of poetry? So you're going to see me do a lot of reading on some stuff because I'm trying out some new poems. But you guys will probably be like the first few people to like ever hear it. Is that okay? You guys are literally only my second show of the year, right? Like I wrote a lot of this stuff during COVID, and so I didn't have enough live shows to come and to try these things out. I've just been doing them virtually, which by the way we'll get to in a minute. But the fact that you guys are here and the fact that I can perform in front of a crowd again, you have no idea what that feels like from up here. Like I've been doing nothing but virtuals, and virtuals are horrible. Like they're fine, but at the same time you don't get that connection. So I wrote this poem. It's about fatherhood, and we'll see how it goes. If you don't like them, if you like them, then let me know. If you don't like them, I'm sorry. But if you like them, come let me know, because then I'll know to include it in my set. Like, so a lot of, then I'll know, like, okay, that I should take the time to memorize that, because that's, So anyway, ask any member of my family how to prepare a particular dish, and I guarantee you won't get an exact recipe. Case in point, while attempting to decipher the scribbles my father gave me on how to make pork adobo, I called him to find out how much vinegar to add to the soy sauce, and he replied, oh, enough. Like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? It took me years to figure out that even he didn't know the answer. The recipe was my grandmother's, and she was known for her cooking and not for her clarity. Her hands always smelled of garlic. I'm guessing is to keep at bay all the monsters hell-bent on spilling her secrets. Case in point, once, when her children kept pressing her for the truth about their father's disappearance, she held up those garlic palms and said, that's enough. It's been years since we laid her to rest, but good luck trying to convince my father that during death, the muscles hardened. Because he's still trying to pry the secrets, she died clutching between those cooking hands. He continues to stir the pot, searching for his father like a missing page in a cookbook, as if there was a picture, followed by instructions, but he stopped knowing what to do after a certain point, and now he tinkers with the recipe, hell-bent on making his own family look as perfect as that picture, as if it won't ever taste right until it does. I think the kare-kare needs more sugar. I heard he was last seen in Manila. Her sinigang was never this sour. I'm sure there's someone that can track him down. I just want to know what this is missing. I just want to know what happened. Does this taste like hers to you? Do you think he left because of us? Was I not good enough? I asked him if it matters that much, if the truth or the refrigerator doors that once opened will shed a light on his own shortcomings, and he says the truth won't be easy to digest, but how could he know if he's done his best as a father without a point of reference? So I tell him fatherhood is no different than the recipes he gave me, scribbled and messy. We make of it what we can, throw it against the wall and see what sticks, because the truth is, between his and my grandmother's cooking, I actually prefer his, because as epic as her dishes were, to me they are just memories now, but yours, dear father, still lingers in my mouth. You've done well with the ingredients you've been given. You've done well with keeping us full. Enough with the careful measures. Enough with the chasing of ghosts. Enough with the lighting of stoves, trying to hold a flame to your mother's greatness, because even she will tell you the most flavorful life is always made to taste. She will tell you her recipes were vague because they were never meant to be obeyed. She will tell you our family may not be as perfect as that picture, but goddamn, we still cooked up something pretty great anyway. But if you still insist, okay. I will confess this. When I was 12 years old, she brought me into the kitchen and taught me how to cook her signature sweet brown rice. Showed me how to make it taste exactly like hers. I'm pretty sure she knew I would teach it to you one day, so I'll show you how to make it. A complete and detailed recipe, a little bit of her that's been left untouched. We both hope it can fill that void, and we both hope, dear Father, it's enough. So, speaking of family, raise your hand if you have at least one other sibling, and keep it up. Let me just do a little thing here. Keep it up if you have at least 2 or more. 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's cool. Like, oh, it's about 4 in general. I did a college last week, and somebody raised their hand. They said 14. I'm like, 14? That's like a small Philippine village. That's a lot of people in one family. And I'm like, is it from different, different families? Because no, from the same mom and dad. 14. I'm like, Lord, I have one. Like, okay, anyway. That being said, there's 4 of us. It's me, my sister Kate, my brother George, my sister Carla. Now, just to kind of give you guys a background on how I tour, whenever you guys are in school, I'm on the road. And whenever you guys are on break, I'm on break. So I love when you guys are on break, because then that means I get to sit at home, do nothing all day except scratch myself. Literally. Have nothing to do with my time, right? I would sit at home. Now, my wife works every day in the ER, works from 12 o'clock at night to 12 o'clock in the afternoon to 12 o'clock at night, leaves me home alone. Now, when you've been with somebody as long as me and her have been together, you start to get used to each other being like the balance. That when one of us is not there, the other one kind of goes stir crazy. Like if we're both working, it's fine, right? Like if I'm doing my shows and she's at work, we're not thinking of each other. But like right now, like I was texting her just now, and she's going kind of crazy because she's like off today and there's nothing to do, and I'm like out and about. So same thing when I'm home and she's at work, she'll get home that night, walk into the room and be like, "Are you still wearing the same shit you wore like when I left this morning?" I'm like, yeah, I don't need to change. She's like, "Oh my God, like it's so nasty, right?" And like there's Cheetos everywhere. There's Cheetos on my shirt, like, and watching TV, like binge watching some show, and she's like, "Oh my God, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, go do something, make something of your time instead of just sitting at home." I'm like, "What? I like to relax. It's fine." And she's like, "This house is a lot more peaceful when you're not in it." And I'm like, "Well, damn, that's kind of messed up, right?" She's like, "No, I'm just saying that I can see her going crazy. Like, I think you should go on vacation, do something." And I'm like, "Well, where am I supposed to go?" She's like, "I don't know. Go to California. Go visit your mom, your brother and sisters." I'm like, "Oh, it's actually a really good idea." So summer 2012, I flew to California from Florida, and all I did was sit at my mom's couch doing nothing all day until my sister got home from work. She would get home, my sister Kate would get home from work right around 2. She'll sit down next to me, we'll open our laptops, we'll watch TV, and not say a single word to each other for like 4 hours, right? Like, have you ever been that close with somebody that you don't even need to talk? Like, you just love being around them so much, it didn't matter if you had anything to say, you just love being in their presence. Now, don't get me wrong, when me and my siblings are goofing around, we're like the most hilarious group of people ever, but there were times we just loved being in each other's presence without having to say or do anything. Well, on the last day that I was supposed to fly back to Florida, my sister came home really early, like 2 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I looked at her and I'm like, "Well, what are you doing home? Like, it's so early." And she's like, "Well, I've had this headache and I just couldn't take it anymore, and so I decided to call out of work." Now, my sister never calls out of work. She's one of those people that she has that kind of work ethic that no matter what, she always finds a way to make it in, even when she's sick. And the thing is, my sister never gets sick. Like, she's fully healthy. There's nothing wrong with her. I mean, maybe except for her liver, because apparently her and Hennessy have a very important relationship, right? In every family, there's always that one person whose job it is to get everybody drunk. Like, that's my sister. Like, she'll give shots to my grandma, and I'd be like, "Kate, she's like 89. And my sister will be like, "Well, she needs to man up." And the funny thing is, my grandma will outdrink all of us. I'm like, you forget, she came from the poorest parts of the Philippines where they couldn't afford liquor, so they would mix rubbing alcohol with Sprite. They were just gangsta like that, right? So I'm like, so for her, like, Hennessy was nothing, right? So anyway, so with her having a headache, my mom's like freaking out. She's like, "We need to take you to the ER. Something might be wrong with you. Something might be wrong with your head." And I'm like, "Well, of course something's wrong with her head." You know what I mean? And she was like, my sister was like, "I'm fine, just a headache. It'll go away. And I get these all the time. It'll go away." And I looked at her, I said, "Look, you better go, because having Asian parents, they're gonna worry about you every single moment until they like can make sure it's nothing." I'm like, just go make mom happy, go to the ER, get it checked out. So they go to the ER, I stayed home, finished packing. A couple hours later, I get a text message from my sister, and she's like, "Yeah, so it looks like they found a tumor in my brain." I'm like, "Crap." So I called the airline, canceled my flight, went to the ER to check up on her. And when I got there, she was like, "Oh, good news. It looks like the tumor isn't cancerous. Looks like I've had it since I was 15. It's actually in between the two halves of the brain on the surface. And the doctor says all they got to do, cut a hole, take it out. I should be out of there within a couple of weeks. The only downside is they're going to have to put a metal plate in my head. But I think that's okay, because I'll probably get better cell phone signal." Like, that's just how we make jokes, right? So knowing that she was going to be okay, I flew back to Florida that Friday. That Monday, she went into surgery. That Tuesday, I called up her fiance. I'm like, "Hey, how's my sister doing?" He's like, "Oh, she's good. She woke up. She recognized all of us. She even called your brother ugly, so we know her brain's still intact, right?" The only thing is she couldn't move some of her extremities, but the doctor said that's probably because of the anesthesia. But as soon as the anesthesia wears off, she should be good to go. So I hung up the phone. That Thursday, I get a frantic phone call from my mom, and she's like, "You need to come back." Somewhere in the middle of the night, a blood vessel hemorrhaged in her brain. They couldn't stop the bleeding, so they rushed her back to the ICU. "We don't know what's going on or what's happening. Just get back here as soon as you can." So I flew back to California that Friday. By that Sunday, the doctors had pronounced her brain dead. By that Tuesday, we were pulling the plug. And then by that Saturday, I was burying my sister. Now, we've had this, let me say this. a couple years ago, before COVID hit, I was touring colleges, and I would look around the room, and in the beginning of my career, back in '06, not many people were much on their phones, right? Like, we had phones, but we didn't even have the iPhone out yet. So we were still kind of not using phones in that way. But as my career kept going, right around 2011, 2010, I started seeing people start being on their phones a lot more often, right? And then right before COVID, I would do shows, and there was always somebody texting. You ever hang around people, like a group of friends, and you look around the room and everybody's on their phones, who the hell are you talking to right now? Everybody that means something to you is right here, and you're worried about a world that didn't even exist, right? And then COVID hit, and then when COVID hit, suddenly this is all we had. Everything was virtual, everything was Zoom meetings, everything was just, you couldn't be around people. And so I try to remind myself that now that we're here and we're in front of people, let's take advantage of this moment, right? We're always worried about what we have to go do later or what we had to do earlier that we still got to get caught up on. We're always so looking to the other time that we're never really fully in the moment that we're in, right? And right now, this is the moment that we're in. You and I, we may never see each other again. This may be the only time that we will have together, and then we go off into our own lives and live our own lives. But hopefully, we can kind of impart some sort of exchange between us, whether or not that's me giving you poetry and something that you take with you for the rest of your life, or it could be something that you're giving me and reminding me why I love to do this. Just you guys reacting already reminds me why I love being in-person shows, or seeing just small gestures of going from that table to over here, just saying we're here, and that makes me happy, because at any given moment that can go away, and we've seen it go away. So let's not live in that way anymore. Let's find a way to be connected once again. So I'm gonna do the poem that I wrote for my sister. It's without a doubt the hardest poem I'd had to write, but I think it's one of the most important. And so let's do that. When the snow falls in the winter, the woolly caterpillar crawls into a crevice and freezes to death. Its blood stops flowing, its lungs hardens into ice, its heart comes slowly to a halt. The heart is always the last to go. But when the snow melts in the spring, the ice thaws from its ventricles, the crystals dissolves from its lungs, and just as slowly as it died, the woolly caterpillar awakens and comes back to life. For 120 hours, we waited for my sister to wake up. My family mumbling prayers around the doctor who tells us she fell into a coma when a blood vessel hemorrhaged, and my father hasn't stopped praying since. My stepfather searching the eyes of doctors for the answers to those prayers. My siblings pushing me into the room as though I could perform a miracle. My mother making twin towers of my arms the way she crashed into them now, while I attempted to believe that my faith far exceeds science and God would awaken her somehow. Awaken, sweet sister. Tell me that my tears the size of mustard seeds will fall upon your cheek and move the mountain of swelling in your brain. Tell me that the same God who makes all things possible can still live up to his name, because right now that name belongs to your mother, who's cursing God for being too coward to make up his own mind as she stares at the medical forms granting the hospital permission to let you die. If he wants her, then take her, she says. Who am I to decide? And by her side is your fiancé, whose fists are stones he's ready to throw if the doctor mentions organ donation just one more time. But your father, he sits still praying at your bedside, wrapping rosaries around your hands and tucking prayer cards behind your neck. God will resurrect my daughter, he says. Please, God, tell me she'll resurrect. How do I respond? How do I agree when the tubes of your IV intertwines around my throat, strangles my voice every time I plead, awaken, sweet sister. Make this poem easier to write. Tonight, pull out the respirator in your throat and speak the words that will end this poem brighter than how it begun. Remove the tubes and we'll blow kisses into your veins that you may know where the true source of your life comes from, how it comes from your heart, how in this hurricane world you broke into tiny pieces, dropped them like care packages on our laps. You always had enough of it to give, which is why there are 200 people in the waiting room now, ready to give it back in case you needed to live. But on the seventh day, the doctor gave us the results of the last test my sister will ever take, and I swear I'm not built for earthquakes like that. My knees buckling like a bridge, my arms shaking too much to catch another one of my mother's crash landings. None of us was left standing. We were all falling through the cracks, falling until we hit the floor of her room that night. This is what rock bottom must look like. The nurse disconnecting her machines, our hands stretching to touch a part of her as we wailed, our tears dropping as fast as her heartbeat, our sanity vanishing with her breath. Faster it faded, my stepfather stroking her face. Faster it faded, my father presses her hand to his cheek. Faster it faded, we're still waiting on a miracle. Faster it faded, my face planted to my mother's belly. Mommy, this hurts. Faster it faded, and then it was finished. The monitors dropped to 0, and as her breath emptied and her heartbeat slowed, her fiancé removes the ring from her finger, ties it to his necklace, and says, how fitting. It was her heart that was the last to go. It was silent after that, silent as my mother reaches over to close her daughter's eyes. My stepfather releases a long-awaited sigh. My sibling straightens the creases in her blanket while my father unravels the rosary from her hands, takes the prayer cards from behind her neck and sifts them into his pocket, places a kiss on her forehead, her chest, and both her shoulders. Put in a good word to God for us, he says. And that's when I knew that all along we had failed to see the light at the end of this tunnel she was going through. Because while we were praying for her awakening, the awakening was really meant for us to remind us that life is a coma we can still choose to wake up from. That faith means not having to wait for the sun to come, because sometimes the sun doesn't come, but we can still rise on our own. Her last breath has already blown life into the candles of our bones, with nothing more but a wish that we may live more fully. The woolly caterpillar freezes to death in the winter and comes back to life in the spring. For 14 years, it goes through the same cycle of awakening, waiting until the final year when its work is complete, then spins itself into a cocoon to be reborn a moth and fly away for good. So sleep now, sweet sister. You've surrendered your life for too many winters. We'll take it from here. Sleep now wherever you wake. May you be reborn with wings on your back, fly into the sun, knowing when our own winter ends, spring will come and we'll see each other again. But until then, yeah, put in a good word to God for us. I'm sorry. I know some of you guys are like, Asia, how are you going to try to make us laugh 1 minute and then cry the next? It's okay. I think you should go through every emotion you could possibly feel in one day, because it makes you feel like you had a complete day, right? Someone's going to say to you, hey, what'd you do earlier? Oh yeah, I laughed, I cried, I did everything, right? It's fine. It's all good. Love is about trust. Want to test it? Don't clear your browser history. Huh? Yeah. Listen, you need a ride or die friend, right? Like that guy, the person that if something were to happen to you, like they know exactly what to do with all your electronics. I have said friends, right? Like in the event of my demise, they'd be like, okay, Operation Wipeout is in effect, and they got to go and take care of all that. You don't want any incriminating stuff, right? Yeah. Okay. When you love someone, love even their sickness. My wife's sickness is Target. Yo, for real, how many of you are like, okay, see, someone is laughing really hard. You're like a Target freak, right? I bet, right? You love Target. Like, well, no, I'm talking to the student behind you, sure, and she started laughing really hard over there too. So I'm like, now she's turning red. See, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like embarrass you. But like, okay, last week, me and my wife were sitting outside of Target, and I looked at her and go, all right, what do we need? And she's like, all right, we need to get bananas, I need to get some paper towels, and then I need to get some dish soap. I'm like, that's it, right? And she's like, yeah, that's it. I'm like, that's it, right? She's like, yeah, what are you hassling me for? I'm like, well, I want to make sure that when we go inside that we're not going to come home with a whole bunch, like, you're not going to go shop for anything else. We're in and we're out, like less than 10 minutes. She's like, I don't know, maybe I might see something. And I'm like, see, that is the problem. When you start calling audibles like that, that is not a good thing. Because then we go to Target, we come back with like $300 worth of stuff, and then we miss the 3 things that we were supposed to go and get. Like, we get everything else. Like, why did you bring home a porcelain chihuahua? Like, we didn't even need this. And she's like, well, it was on clearance. I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, see, I know some of y'all. Like, you get into Target and you lose your minds. I would write haikus about your endless beauty, but don't have enough. That was one of my favorites. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's talk about love for a second. Speaking of, okay, so my sister, let me tell you a little thing about my sister. My sister was notorious for wanting me and my wife to have kids, right? Like, she would push us to have kids. Like, it was in almost creepy kind of levels. Like we would go visit California, right? And my sister would push me and my wife into the room, like, don't come out till you've conceived. I'm like, that's disturbing as hell, right? And she's like, she wanted to be an aunt, like so badly. But me going through cancer, testicular cancer at that, it was a good chance that we may never have children. Like, and we knew that might be a possibility. 2 years into my cancer, we did manage to get pregnant. So we're like, oh, this is cool, right? My sister got so excited, you guys, like was super amped. She was even like, oh my God, you have to name your kid after like a hotel in Vegas. Like Vegas was her like favorite city. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not naming my kid Bellagio, okay? And she's like, no, but like Caesar, Aria. I'm like, oh yeah, those are pretty cool. Aria, Game of Thrones, right? It was all good. I'm like, okay, so maybe that'd be cool. 2 months into our pregnancy, we were at a holiday party, and we were heading home, and my wife was like, hurry up and get home, like something, I feel like I gotta pee. So, we get home, and she was in the bathroom, and then like a few minutes later, she's like, Asia, get in here. And that should tell you everything that you need to kind of know. We had lost a baby that night, and I could never feel what she felt, right? Like that was tough on her. But I wanted to kind of tell my side of it as well, because for someone who, like, we had all this hope, like, oh man, we're going to be, we thought it was going to be impossible, and here we are. So I'm going to do this poem. It is one of the hardest poems that I had to write as well. But I promise, I won't leave you down there. I know that was like one sad poem after the other, but I'll lift you guys back up. Just stay with me for a second. And we'll talk about it after this, but here you go. The shower has been running for over an hour. When I find her, she's sitting cross-legged at the far end of the bathtub, and without looking up, she says, the blood has finally slowed down. These were the first words she's spoken since the hospital. I'm sure she's been waiting to speak until now, at least here, with the water streaming down her face. There's no way for me to tell if she's been crying. She says, remind me tomorrow to cancel the baby registry. What am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to be good with words, but right now, there's a bright pink river snaking its way towards the drain, and I can't get my tongue to paddle us upstream back into her womb where we left our happiness yesterday. I read the story of a 12-year-old boy, locked for 2 years in the bathroom, the light switch covered with duct tape to keep him from turning on the lights when they found him. He was too weak to climb out of the bathtub on his own. Before that, I read the story of a 3-year-old child hung upside down and beaten with a frying pan, then left to die on the floor while his parents screwed on the air mattress next to him. Before that, I read the story of a 6-year-old girl who felt the only way to overcome the bullying was to hang herself with a jump rope. A jump rope. At what point did she feel so ignored? She felt the only way to be heard was to turn that jump rope into a cord, tie that cord around her voice, anchor it to the heavens, and play telephone with God. Sweet, sweet girl, if only my wife would have heard you. She would have answered that call. She would have shown you how to use that jump rope properly. It's why I don't tell her these stories of these children born into monsters and afraid to sleep in the dark, because it would only remind her there's a nightlight we bought for the nursery that will never be used. It's even one of those night lights that light up the ceiling with tiny stars that night. We slept in each other's arms, our bodies entwined into a figure eight of infinity, because that's how loud we dialed up the silence. And the only words of comfort I could muster was to tell her we'll just be the best aunt and uncle to everyone else's kids. Like this was some sort of consolation prize. Sometimes the math just doesn't add up. On one side is a child wanting nothing more than a safe place to sleep. On the other, our parents staring at a crib they will never get to assemble. My God, can you not see this? Can you not do something to close the distance? Or at least tell me what to say to my wife to lift her up when an empty womb feels so heavy, all she can do is collapse in the corner of our bathtub that Sunday. As I sat in church with my arms crossed, I glanced over to find her on her knees, her surrender telling me that sometimes the only way up is to hit the ground. The whispered prayers will reach heaven further than my screams, and for 2 years she did this, not once getting loud, stacked each prayer on top of the other until it was high enough to pierce the clouds, and finally he answered. His cross appearing in the window of that positive pregnancy test, and now I am bent over the same bathtub I found her years before, giving our 2-year-old son a bath. He splashes water on the floor, laughs when I get angry, and when we finish, when I tell him to put his bath toys away, he kisses each one just before he drops it into the basket. He knows how to love because he is loved. He knows how to love because he is loved. I pray every child could be as lucky. All right. So I'm sitting here playing this, like, the next poem I'm gonna do, actually, I do have a track for. A lot of these poems that I'm doing now, I just had to find tracks from my album that I could use for poems. And I'm realizing now, since it's the first time I've had to do this, why so choppy. I know this show seems choppy, but I'm realizing now, okay, that track won't work for this, and this one won't work for that. I don't know if you could know this, but because I know my work, like, I'm like, okay, that's probably not gonna fly. But now I know. Are y'all having a good time so far, though? Yeah, we still here? All right. I want to make sure because I always worry, like, especially, like, who wants to be crying at noon, right, on a Friday, right? Like, who wants to hear sad poems at noon on a Friday? But hey, sometimes it's uplifting. It is what it is. Despite stereotype, not all Asians are good at math. That's why this haiku has 27 syllables. So this one I wrote for my son. So real quick story. When he was in VPK, I love the school he's at now, but before that he was at this pre-kindergarten school. It was at our church. And he had one of those teachers that just wasn't very keen on certain things. I'll talk about that in a minute. But she came to us and goes, have you guys ever had him tested for anything? Because he's very busy. That's what she said. Like, you know, so I don't know if there's like pills or whatever. And I'm like, my kid is 3 years old, right? Like, it was just the most insane thing that a teacher said to me. So I wrote this for him. You think he needs pills because he can't sit still. Maybe you're just boring. That's one of my favorites. I asked my son what he wants to be when he grows up. He said, happy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so my son was born with something called neurofibromatosis. Now, that's one of those things that is very new. Like, there's not even a lot of research on it yet. Do any of you know what neurofibromatosis is? No? See, that's my point. When he was born, he was filled with all these, what they call cafe au lait spots, these little freckles, like, all over his body. You can't tell. Like, they're not, like, in that way where, like, oh, my God, it's all covered. Like, but when you look close, there's all these, like, dots. And so when they saw him, they're like, you might want to get him tested out. Now, neurofibromatosis is a genetic condition. For the most part, it's not really going to bother the person. Like, there's nothing really, anything about it that's going to make it detrimental. The rarest case, though, are people with neurofibromatosis will start to get a ton of tumors growing in their body. If you've ever seen pictures of people that look like their face is melting, that's somebody with the worst, like the most rarest case of NF. So the doctor said, well, when he's 3 or 4, you'll start to see if that's going to happen. If that doesn't happen by then for the most part, he's not. And luckily, he doesn't. But every year, he still has to get tested and get scanned just to see if there's any tumors that are growing, because sometimes the tumor can grow like in his eyes, which can cause blindness. It can grow in his brain, which will cause some stuff, you know. And so far, he's been cleared with that too. But the thing about NF is that sometimes you will grow up with with a lot of different delays. So he had learning disabilities where he's learning now. I mean, he's picking up, like, he'll catch up eventually, but it's hard for him to grasp certain concepts. And he'll get like ADHD, which has been a struggle. He also had physical delays where he couldn't even start walking till he was like a year and 7 months, right? Year 7 months when he finally was starting to walk. And then he also couldn't jump until he was like 3. He didn't even learn how to ride a bike until like last year. And that's only because it was pandemic season. And so I was just spending a lot of time with him trying to get him to learn, and he finally picked it up. But even now, he's still taking like OT and PT and all that stuff because he has just a lot of these delays. But the thing is, somebody said to me, you need to start mourning the child you wanted and start embracing the child you have. You know, when especially if you're in college, you're thinking about your future. Some of you might be thinking about getting married. Some of you might think about having kids. And you have these pictures in your head of how your kid's going to be. So I imagine this kid is going to be like the poetry prodigy, right? And like whatever. But like, he is not into that at all. Like, and I try to get him into sports. Not interested, right? But this kid last year won the Tech Whiz Award at school, right? He won the Tech Whiz Award. And I was like, okay, cool. So I asked him, I said, oh, congratulations. And the teacher hit us up. He goes, would you like to know why your son won the Tech Whiz Award at school? I'm like, no, tell us why. He goes, because we were at the computer lab and he hacked into one of the computers and made himself an administrator, and we couldn't even get IT to remove him. I'm like, oh my God, like how did he even do it? Because we don't know. We don't know how he was able to get in there. And I'm like, And in my head, so I was like, all right, we'll make sure to talk to him. And so at home, I'm like, Eris, you don't do that, whatever, whatever. But in my head, I'm like, please be the next, like, Steve Jobs. Please be the next, like, Jeff Bezos. Make me rich, damn it, right? Like, you start to realize that this guy, okay, here's how I knew. I kind of saw that coming, because when he was 4, I was on my bank account, and I saw $200 was charged to Amazon. And I'm like, I didn't buy anything at Amazon for $200. That same day, right, just coincidentally, that same day, a package was left at my house. And it was this humongous box. And when I opened it, it was the exact same snow cone machine that they have at his school, right? And so I looked at him, I said, Eris, did you order a snow cone machine? He goes, yes. I go, why did you order a snow cone machine? He goes, well, they have one at school. I wanted to make it at home. And I'm like, how did you even do this? And then he goes, with your phone. And I said, show me. So I hand him my phone. This man looks at it, puts in my numbers, and I'm like, you can't even do math, and yet you know my freaking passcode, right? Gets in, swipe, 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 finds Amazon, clicks on it, then hits the microphone, and it was like, snow cone machine. And it pulls up all the snow cone machines that you can get. He just found the one that went to his school and did that one-click buy thing. And I'm like, I swear to God. And I looked at my wife, I said, did we return this? My wife's like, you know what? Let him hide it in the closet and we'll give it to him for Christmas, right? I'm like, yeah, that's true. It was like October. So we hid it in the closet. We told him we were returning it. Then Christmas, he opened the box, he opened it up, and he goes, oh, a snow cone machine. I go, look, Eris, a snow cone machine. He goes, I know, I bought it. And I'm like, what the hell, right? Like, and so every summer, so that summer, we went to the kids fair, and he makes like snow cones for like kids, like at the fair. I'm like, you're gonna make this money back. Like, you're gonna learn how to be industrious. I don't care. Like, you bought this, you're gonna make, yeah. So the point is, you have to like, I wanted to write a poem from when he was born. Obviously, when you're a parent, you're like, I'm going to write a poem. You're a poet. Like, I'm going to write a poem for my kid and all this stuff. But I didn't want to write this cliche poem. And for years, I just kind of left it alone. And then, as a poet, you start to say to yourself, I'm going to just wait until the poem is ready to be written. The poem will let me know. And his first day of school, his first day of kindergarten, we were sitting there. I was getting him dressed for school. And I saw all the spots that were on his body, and I said, all right, I'm gonna put a hoodie on you. And I put a hoodie on him because I was in my head, I'm like, I didn't want kids to make fun of him, like, hey, what are those spots? I didn't want him being questioned. Kids can be cruel, right? And so he starts complaining. He's like, Daddy, it's hot outside. I mean, it's Florida. It's like 98 degrees, right? And I'm like, it's fine. You'll be indoors. Just wear the hoodie. And he starts fighting me about why he doesn't want to wear the hoodie. And I realized, like, what am I doing? I am putting my own like insecurities on this kid, right? Like, he doesn't even know what being made fun of means. And yet here I am preparing him for something that hasn't even happened yet. So I wrote this poem as a dedication to him, but also a dedication to you. Because all of us in here, every one of us in here, we look at ourselves and we know what we don't like. We already do. Like, someone once said to me, nothing anyone can say or do to me is worse than what I've said and done to myself, right? Which is true. We are our worst critics. And I know, looking at me, like I used to hate being skinny. I've been skinny my whole life. Like, I think that's why I started writing poetry. It was the only way for me to get girls' attention in high school, in like elementary school. Like, if I write her a poem, right? Like, exactly. Like, no one wanted to come to me. Like, I was the only Asian kid at that school. They were like, oh, he'll help us with math homework. And I'm like, well, joke's on you. I suck at math. So I did it anyway, right? And failed everybody. If I'm going down, all you are going down with me because of your stereotype. So I wrote this poem, and it's dedicated to him, dedicated to you. One of my favorite poems, and I'm glad I actually have the track for it, but here it is. Every year, there are roughly 130 million babies and 150 billion stars born in the entire known universe. In a span of 9 years, my wife and I had 3 known miscarriages. All that to say, we spent a lot of time floating in the empty void of space, wondering why the numbers never stacked in our favor. When we finally caught the comet, the geneticist saw the 100 tiny birthmarks that freckled my son's entire body and told us this was a symptom of neurofibromatosis, a rare genetic condition that can cause benign tumors to grow in the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. At its worst, so many tumors can grow it can sag his skin and make his face look like it's melting, and I'm wondering, how will I handle the tumors if they come? If I can't even stand to look at the birthmarks that are already there, fast forward 4 years. It's his first day of school and he's throwing a tantrum because I'm making him wear a hoodie in this 90-degree weather, but I can't tell him I'm trying to hide the spots. It's just I know too well people's tendency to be cruel, how they like to chop down trees just to make more handles to mount their axe, and I won't let him get whittled down by sharp tongues like that, watching them take from him and turn him into something that he's not until he slowly becomes the weapon that's turning on himself. I know too well that kind of self-hate, and right now I'm just doing my best to control the fate of what's meant to become of my son, so please just put this hoodie on because you can't yet see your birthmarks for what they truly are. But just then, while standing there naked, he held up his arms and said, "Daddy, they look like stars." Then pointing to the biggest one on his ribs, he said, "Daddy, this one looks like a spaceship. So forgive me for failing to compose myself when he started making up stories of the spaceship flying through the galaxy that is his body. Have I forgotten how much energy it takes to create a planet? Have I forgotten about the black hole that can suck the life out of an empty womb? Have I forgotten about the empty space that was left behind after the first time I dismantled the unused crib in our bedroom? How dare me think I know more about this universe than you do? How dare me forget all the stars that fizzled out before you came shining through? You were born, you are here, riddled with spots as proof you exist. It's why they call them birthmarks to begin with. So how lucky are we that you have more than most? Miracle boy, I know one day you might want to eclipse yourself into that hoodie to hide behind the moon as they stare and point. Well, let them stare and point the same way they stare and point at stars in wonder and awe. Remind them they're merely specks of dust in the vastness of your presence. And when the bullies come with their meteor shower of insults aiming to hit you at your core, swing your Milky Way arms to the bridge of their nose so they will always know that you are the big bang your mother and I have been waiting for. You walking constellation, you lightspeed traveler, you rocket of hope. I've gone on with this metaphor for too long, I know, but every year there are roughly 130 million babies and 150 billion stars born in the entire known universe. All that to say, no matter how worse your condition becomes, we will always love you until infinity. You are our son, our 1 in 150 billion. Oh, it actually ended right like as I finished that. Oh, look at that. Asia Samson knows what he's doing. I got like 3 more poems for y'all. These are all brand new poems just because, I definitely want to try out some stuff. So are you cool with that? Y'all good with that? Yeah? Before I do that, I will say, follow me on social media, and I do have a website, theasiaproject.com. That's The Asia Project. Don't go to theasianproject.com. If you go to theasianproject.com, it's a website that sells bowls and noodles. Like, that's not me, okay? I just want you to get on there and be like, oh, that's his hustle. No, that is not, okay? Theasiaproject.com, from there, it'll lead you to, we have merch on there. We have our tracks on there. You can follow me on Spotify, too, like all of our tracks with the right music to it. All my albums are on Spotify. Just look for The Asia Project. Same thing for Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Just look for The Asia Project, all that. I don't really get on Twitter much. I don't know how much you guys do. I don't get on Twitter much just because I feel like I'm talking to myself when I'm on there. But I am on Instagram a lot. I am on Facebook a lot. And I am way too old to be doing TikToks. That's all. Everybody's like, you should try TikToks. I'm like, the hell am I going to do for TikToks? I mean, maybe I can figure it out, but I just feel like I'd be that creepy old guy, like on TikTok, that's trying to make TikTok videos, and I shouldn't be. Like, that's just not me anymore, right? Like, I don't know. It's fine. You gotta accept. Look, I know all of y'all are laughing, right? Like, but one day you're gonna be here, my age, and looking at kids, be like, I am not doing that. I am way too grown for doing those type of things now, right? And you'll get to that point where you're not gonna understand some references anymore, and yeah, it is what it is. So, yeah. All right. I'm trying to figure out which poems. So I wrote this poem during the pandemic as well. Actually, not during the pandemic, but this is not to call anybody out or anything like that. Where are my Asian people at? Yeah, okay. All right, nobody? Couple people? Yeah, I'm sure, I'm wondering. Okay. So there was a period where Asians were kind of under attack, and somebody asked me, because I'm like their only token Asian friend, well, what do you feel about it, right? And me being in the Asian community as well, I mean, it was scary, especially like my mom lived in San Francisco. So I would tell her, like, don't go outside, even if my mom was like, but we're not Chinese, they're only going after Chinese. I'm like, you think they care? Like, they don't know. Like, no one sits there and asks you first, like, hey, what kind of Asian are you? No, like, because outside, everybody sees Asians as just Asians. Like, that's just, right? And so, so I wrote this poem because it was kind of to Asian people, dedicated to Asian people, but also to just the world. It wasn't fully written. I wrote this. This is one of those poems that I wrote out of emotion, right? And what I mean by that is normally when I write new poems, I wait until I've had some distance from whatever just went down and then write a poem so I can reflect on it. This is one of those where I was so angry and I was so sad and that I just wrote it right there and then. So it's not going to be like one of those poems that I really took the time to like craft every single syllable. It was more from what I was feeling at the time. And so, yeah. This poem is broken. This poem is not polished. This poem is not pretty. Vicha Ratanapakdi, an 84-year-old Thai immigrant, was on this ritual walk around his neighborhood in San Francisco when an assailant ran from across the street and shoved him to the ground. He would never recover. When asked what prompted his attacker to do this, the DA said he was having a temper tantrum. Months later, a man opened fire into 3 Asian-owned massage parlors, killing 8 people, mostly Asian, mostly women. When asked what prompted the shooter to do this, the sheriff's spokesperson said he was having a bad day. Yesterday, I was telling my friend about the current rise in attacks against my people, and he says he's been looking at government databases and hasn't seen a spike. He said not that he doesn't believe me, but says of course you'll see more attacks on a particular race if said race is who makes up the population in that city, i.e. Chinatown, i.e. Southside Chicago, i.e. did you know more white people actually die in the hands of cops, i.e. numbers never lie. Tell me, how can one fight for justice when crimes against us are always justified? I think it's what hurts the most, more than the attacks, more than the killings, more than the Kung Flu China virus slurs being hurled in our direction, to know they turned their cheek after slapping us against ours. Right now in the Bay Area, there is a game being played called the Slap an Asian Challenge because they see us as a non-threat, a pushover race, until the day the word pushover becomes literal. I read a post where someone said, maybe this wouldn't happen if Asians weren't so passive all the time. Parts of me wants to tell him, don't ever confuse passivity with sleeping dragons. Did you know that during the Spanish rule of the Philippines, the Spaniards would look at my people and say, look how happy they are, doing dances with those sticks. What they didn't know was that my ancestors hid their fighting moves in those dances, so the Spaniards wouldn't know they were training. To this day, watch any of our cultural dances, and in the movements, you'll find the spirit of every warrior that fought back against their conquerors. But a part of me also wonders if that post was right. If us teaching our children for generations to just work hard and keep your head down is a lesson we should continue to instill, we, the so-called model minority, who've lived with the luxury of distancing ourselves from the fight, i.e. standing rock, i.e. build the wall, i.e. Black Lives Matter. But tell me, my people who I love so very much, what happens now when the fight finds its way to us? When they deem it our turn to play the role of scapegoat, assimilation will never hide the way we're seen. Hiding our accent will never round out our eyes. Trust me when I say, try slapping me in my cheek, and I will not turn to give you the other side. During George Floyd, I called as many black friends of mine to see how they were holding up. Who would have thought this just 1 year later, it would be them that were reaching out to me, would quickly call me out if I ever said I'm good, because I know because you can bet they know better than anyone what I'm good really means, so I don't dare lie. I tell them I am in badly need of allies, that I hope I was as supportive to them as I'm asking them now to be for me. I tell them I used to hear their poems on racism, on injustice, on inequality, how it would bring thunderous applause, push the crowd in the gut, might even go viral, i.e. win a poetry slam, i.e. become a commercial, i.e. presidential inauguration, but not once have I envied having to live the kind of plight just so I can write poems like that. And believe me, I don't want to be writing this poem now. None of us want to buy art with our traumas. None of us want exposure at the cost of our tears, but here we are, fighting a system that is as unpretty, as unpolished, and as broken as this poem. A people at a loss of direction as much as this rambling, grasping at clouds shaped like these sleeping dragons, hoping it will wake up and take flight, gathering cherry blossoms in our palms before they quickly die, holding on to the fleeting hope that this world and this poem, with all of its brokenness, can still somehow, some way, and beautifully. Trying to figure out which one I want to close with. Okay, so yeah, so I have this poem that I used to close with, but I think there's another poem that I want to close out with as well. This poem is one of those things that, like, for a very long time, when I was touring, I had these big dreams of, like, going humongously viral and becoming famous. I thought I'd be in like private jets by now, right? Like, because I started doing poetry in 2004. I got into HBO Def Poetry Jam in '06. Then there was like, there was Tiny Desk contest, and there was So Far Sounds, there was Story Conference. I was doing all these big things, and still do, but I thought I would just be more like, like millions of followers on Facebook and all this on YouTube and, and Instagram and just be like that, right? And for years I held on to that, and I kept trying to make my career what I thought it needed to be. And then cancer happened, and then my sister passed, and then my wife had all her miscarriages, and then my son was born, and I thought, okay, great, this is like a silver lining, and then he has what he has, and it's just like, like why is all these things happening to me? And last night I was talking to Sharinda, and Sharinda goes, we were showing some of your work to some of our students, and just the one thing they were saying was like, why does it seem all so sad? And I was trying to tell them that if you can keep listening, that it doesn't stay sad. Like it's about, it's the reality. I don't know how much stuff you guys have gone through in your lives, and some of you probably have gone through more in the first 20 years than I've ever gone in the first. Oh my God, I almost gave my age away there. In all the years that I've been around, right? But at the same time, I could also have gone through more stuff in my almost gave it away again, in my amount of years than anyone else might go through for like forever, right? We can never compare struggles. Like we can't be like, somebody gets sick or whatever. Well, at least you don't have, like people will tell me all the time, like, well, your son has NF, but at least he doesn't have cancer. I know people have kids with cancer, or at least he's not this and that. I'm like, you can never compare that, right? Like because everyone's struggles is from inside. Like what we all go through is different, and so it all affects us in many, many different ways. And I think we have to be cognizant of that. But I went through all this stuff, and after going through all that, I came out on the other side realizing that what really is important is the fact that I get to do what I love for a living. Whether or not that gets me accolades or whatever, that's not what we do it for. I got to that point where all I wanted was, let me be a good father, let me be a good husband, and let me be a good person. At the end of the day, that's all. Like someone said to me, you can't change the world, but if you can, just try to change your corner of it. Imagine just changing the little corner of your world, right? Affecting the people around you. It doesn't mean getting up here and performing. It could be in so many ways. It's just being there for someone who needed you. It's being there. It's just making, like with Sharinda, is changing her little corner of the world here in Findlay by like bringing in artists and getting students to come out and watch these shows. Like these are the effects we're making in our world, and that's what we have to do. Change the little corner of the world that you're in, and that has become my goal. And now it's like, you know what? I love poetry too much to try to dilute it with, superstardom, right? And so, not that that's an excuse. I mean, if somebody came to me now and said, hey, we want to sign you to a $3 million, I mean, I'd still take it and everything. I'm just saying, like, it's not really that. That's not the goal, right? And so I wrote this poem. I haven't done this poem live before. Like, well, I have, but I haven't done it in this kind of capacity in a while where I'm going to try to remember it, okay? This is where you get to see me in the process. Like, you've seen me read poems that are new. You've seen me do poems that I've done forever. Now you're going to see me try to do a poem that is somewhere in the middle where I think I have it memorized, but I don't. But it's okay. I have a backup. Well, we'll figure it out. And yeah. After my sister died, my siblings and I had this morbid joke about what we would want written on our tombstones. I told them I wanted mine to say, thank you for visiting. Now please stop standing on my nuts. Not once, between the sick laughter in our teeth, did it occur to any of us. We don't write our own tombstones. Now if the thought of that doesn't scare you, then clearly you haven't thought about the jury responsible for yours, our lovers, our family and friends, or God forbid our children, because those fuckers have more evidence to judge us than anyone. And you're saying that doesn't scare you to death? You don't turn ghosts at the thought that there are people out there who could see right through you? Relax. No one is paying good money to the chisel to remind us you were kind of a dick. Even killers are buried and forgotten in unmarked graves. I am not afraid to be forgotten. I am more afraid of becoming the man. I am not afraid of being forgotten. I am more afraid that my grave will be a monument to a man I never actually became, this embellished lie planted above my casket, forever to hang over my head. But had you asked me back then, I would have said, carve me legend. Carve me saddled on my high horse, carve all my accolades around the base. Might want to spring for the whole mausoleum to make it all fit, if you know what I'm saying. But I've since racked up too much mileage on this tongue from all the years spent running my mouth, and I've since found out that the choir that sings your praises will quickly become the choir that will tear down your pulpit for the materials to build your cross. I know I'm no Jesus. Most times, it's my own God complex that has even my loved ones staring me down with a handful of nails. I'm pretty sure they can't wait to hammer into my ankles if it'll keep me from constantly putting my foot in my mouth. Now, if I could just manage to mortician the ego out, then maybe my open casket won't look so grotesque. We all want to put our best face forward. It's just most times our best face forward has us turning our backs to those responsible for collecting my bones. There are reasons resumes are not carved on tombstones. There's a reason my son can't quote a lick to any of my poems, but word for word recite every one of my bedtime stories that has made him laugh. I remind myself that water where the grass grows, because the worst blow anyone could deliver to a writer like me is a tombstone with something so cliche like loving husband and father, just to take up the space of having nothing else better to say. Nothing is worse than being forgotten than being remembered but unforgiven. It's why this poem is now in its 50th revision, rewriting and rewriting until I have a story where I don't end up the bad guy, because sometimes the bad guys are the ones with the best intentions but became too wrapped up trying to control what their tombstone will say. I don't ever want to win this life like that. I want to be one of the good guys to finish last. I want to be so far back on my final lap that by the time I cross the finish line, the balloons are gone. The music has stopped. The crowd has dispersed, and the only ones left to cheer me on are those that taught me compassion, taught me decency, taught me humility, and just maybe I had made him proud enough to tell the chisel, to tell the tombstone, he was a good man. Yeah, that's it. As simple as that might be. I just really hope my tombstone says, he was a good man. Now please stop standing on his nuts. All right, you guys ready for one more poem? Yeah? We good? So I'm gonna finish up. I have like 3 last haikus. I'm gonna tell you this. If y'all don't like these haikus, I don't know what to tell you. These are gonna be my favorite ones. All right, like if I can't make you laugh with these, then you know what? Forget it. But I'm gonna still keep doing them because I'm gonna write them, and I don't care what people say about it. But yeah, here you go. I believe there's no such things as dogs, said the dyslexic atheist. It's one of those that you probably don't get right away, and I just wait. Practice safe sex. Use protection, like a helmet. Hashtag headboards hurt. Yeah, okay. Now this one I wrote, I was going through a really hard time, right? And I wrote this during the time that I was going through this hard time, and I started using it as a mantra. So if any of you are going through any hard times, remember this haiku, repeat it to yourself, and use it as your own personal mantra. You can definitely take it from me. Push through the pain, no matter how hard. Victory will be yours. Pooping. No? All right. How's COVID doing here? Like, how are you guys like handling, like, I mean, aside from masks, like, when did you guys start coming back to like campus and stuff? Like, when did, last year? Was it around last year? And was it like a really hard transition and all that, or? Oh yeah, you tell me. How did you guys like online learning? No, not at all, huh? I kind of like virtual shows sometimes, because then I could just like be in my underwear. I mean, no one will see that, but from above here, like I would do my virtual shows at home, but it was different. But I mean, hey, I would get paid without having to go anywhere. But why didn't it work out for you guys? How come you guys didn't like it? I mean, you get to be at home, right? You get relax. Or is there a different kind of energy when you're like in bed and, yeah? Now let me ask this, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but does tuition stay the same, or did it like do they reduce it? Oh man, you made it a little bit easier. Oh, cool. Because I was wondering that, because I'm like, well, did you still get charged? It's like, you know what I mean? Like I know I can't charge for a virtual show versus like a full show, but I bring all this because I I wrote this poem, and it's not a banger of a poem. Like, it's not one of those, like, oh my God, he ended his set on this high note, like, blah, whatever, right? But it's more so like, we all went through something together. That's one thing that is the one thing that I can at least say was a good thing, was that we didn't go through it alone, right? Like, we all was going through this. But what's also sad about that type of thing is that when someone loses a family member or someone has COVID, then no one is as understanding, because it's like, well, we're all going through that right now, right? Like, you see, like, there's a lot of, like, apathy, because it's like, well, yeah, who isn't? You know what I mean? And so, like, who's going to do a GoFundMe for someone who may have passed away from COVID when, like, hey, we're dealing with the same things as well. And right now we're dealing with all the backlashes of all that stuff, like the supply chain stuff and all this stuff. And, like, we can't get things when we need them. And it tells you just how much this world relied on those type of things. And then it's gone. And we had it really good. You know what I mean? And yet there's third world countries who, don't even have to, like, access to, like, water forever. Like, never had access to food or water. And us, we can just go to a convenience store and get it. And then now, then there's supply chain stuff where suddenly we're going to a grocery store and it's empty. And now what do we do, right? So I wrote this just kind of remind us of, the fact that we went through something together, and that we will get through it also together. But before I do that, can y'all just give yourselves one big round of applause for coming out and hanging out with me and doing the show with me? And I thank you guys so much for it. And yeah, I actually have a track for this one too. How long has it been? The isolation, the closing in. Would you say days, weeks, maybe months? What if I told you our numbers have been off by a long shot? Because I can't remember the last time I didn't catch us all looking down. How long has it been now? We, staring at the screens, divided always by glass. What if I told you this is not the first time we started wearing masks, our lives so heavily filtered, as if revealing our true selves is a virus we dare not catch. My God, we have gotten so good at being detached, planning for tomorrows and the tomorrows after that. Social distancing is a concept we have always known. We just called it by a different name, called it work, called it busyness, called it not enough hours in the day. What if I told you this is not the first time we have sheltered in place, on the street, on the plane, on the subway, noise-canceling headphones pressed so deep into our ears. But now I wonder, what good is noise canceling when the streets are quiet? So many moments squandered like breath. So many memories that never became, taken from us like a gift we never deserved. How much have we missed? The times we could have shook hands or hugged or kissed. Let us always remember this. When the shelves at the grocery store were as empty as our hearts, when the loneliness closed in like the house we are forced to stay, let us always remember this. These days, when the tomorrows come and we have nowhere to be, these days, when the steps felt heavy, the walk up the driveway to drop off groceries at our parents' front porch, watching them wave goodbye from behind the window, let us always remember this. So when the gates reopen, we can burst through the doors like the last day of school, run quickly to those people, our arms reaching past that 6 feet gap, and make a promise to never let go. I know, I can't wait for the day I can see you all once more, to cherish every step I take towards the microphone and feel your love more presently than I've ever felt it before. Once more to the poets, to the performers, dreaming of the open road, yearning to again fill theaters with laughter. Once more to the teachers, running their hands along the empty desk, the chalk dust settling for far too long now. To the students, trying so hard to get through this somehow, wishing they spent more time looking up from their books. Once more to the restaurants, to the cooks, sobbing in their empty kitchens, waiting for the day to set the tables again. Once more to the hospitals and first responders, working the shifts that won't seem to end, the weariness of healing us from a distance, hidden behind their masks. But I promise, with all that I have, we will be back. We will remove those masks and show the world our smiles. We will reach out and beg to stay in that embrace for a little while. We will be back, stepping out from behind that glass, and we will cry and we will laugh once more, once more, once more. University of Findlay, thank you guys for having me, man. God bless y'all. Good night.